Hey guys,
Greetings to you, fellow OC Remix Fiend.
This is Timmy Wong, better known as DDRKirby ISQ.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jack from England. I remix under the name of Anti-Syne.
I'm José. My remixer handle is XPRTNovice, and I live in Virginia right now.
Hello, my name is Oren of Oren Productions.
What's up everyone? My name is Beverly Wolf. I go by the remixer handle of Rexy.
Hey friends, Mazedude here.
Hi, my name is Forrest Powell. I'm a composer, musician, and mix engineer living in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Hi, this is David Lloyd, djpretzel.
Hi, my name is Patrick Burns.
My name is Michael Birch, but you probably know me a little bit better as Flexstyle.
Hi, I'm Brandon Strader.
My name is Peter Van Os, and I'm known as PU Freak within OCR.
Hello, I'm Amy Shea. I'm also known as Diotrans on OverClocked ReMix.
Hey everyone, I'm Calvin Lesko from Ithaca, New York. I go by the name sphexic on OverClocked ReMix.
I live in a small town near Preston in the north of England.
I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I've lived here my whole life. It's also the capital of Wisconsin.
I live in the desert of Phoenix, Arizona.
I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee.
I live in West Virginia right now, and it's a very nice place, very beautiful. You should visit if you never have.
If I seem really tired, it's because I'm raising a new baby, and I'm exhausted. But, back to the music.
The earliest experience with a non-toy musical instrument that I can remember was with my primary school's upright piano. My interest for it eventually got me to start taking piano lessons around the age of 8.
I started when I was 8 years old. I picked up the clarinet, which is the instrument I chose.
I started piano and guitar lessons when I was really little.
I have a lot of musical background. I've taken instrumental lessons of some sort for about 8 years of my life.
When I was in 6th grade, they told me that I couldn't play clarinet in the jazz band, so I picked up saxophone instead. In between there, I started playing piano because we had one in the house, and I enjoyed it.
I started playing the saxophone in middle school and then progressed up into the trombone in high school. I also started singing in high school.
I've been doing music all my life. As a kid, I had lessons in piano, violin, and flute, and I was lucky enough to have lessons in music composition as well.
They needed a French horn player for one of the bands in middle school, so I picked that up, played that for a couple of years. My dad was a guitar player, so I kind of picked that up by osmosis as things went along. And it just, as life went on, if I was interested in an instrument and I had access to one, I would just pick it up and learn it.
I've been playing piano since I was 5, I think. I always played piano at home with my dad and with my brother. They both played piano as well. And I started lessons, I think, since the age of 10 or 11. I've lessons for 3 years, but what I like, where I get my energy from is to play songs I hear or I have in my head. So if I hear something on the radio or in a game, I just want to find out how it's played and then just play it.
Moved on to my first experiences with studio-based software like Acid, Cakewalk, Reason, and eventually Cubase, which I went on to use during my music production studies since the age of 16.
So I have a broad spectrum of clefs, bass clef and treble clef, although I sing bass as well, so I have more experience in bass clef. I also won the John Philip Sousa Award in high school, which is a huge honor for me. I'm also a Phi Mu Alpha Symphonian, so any brothers out there, all hail.
I went on to study music here in Richmond, Virginia, at the University of Richmond.
I don't have much of a musical background other than being in like high school bands. So I was a band geek. I was in a marching band. I actually started off playing trumpet and then switched to euphonium, which most people don't even know what euphonium is. It's also called a baritone. It's like a baby tuba, low brass. My sisters were both in marching band, so whole family of band geeks.
I am a graduate of the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and I obtained my diploma in audio engineering from them some years ago.
Since graduating from the University of Liverpool in 2007, I have still been musically active and adapting to new tricks, as well as playing the piano for the town's church every Tuesday night, albeit to an audience of mostly children under the age of 12.
I have no music theory knowledge, to be fairly honest. Well, none that I can write about or really explain. I started making music in program software called Trackers. The first one was Impulse Tracker for me, back in 1998.
And then I got into electronic music in high school and read all the keyboard magazines I could find, got an old Casio CZ101. I actually, before that, inherited my sister's Yamaha PSR, which is these little cheesy home keyboards, but the thing about that one is that you could actually program FM synthesis on it. So this is like this old crappy, I don't know, $80 home keyboard that actually allowed you to create your own sound. So that was pretty cool.
So I've been writing and arranging music since I was a kid. And today I'm still active as a musician. I'm a music teacher. And right now I'm working on a solo acoustic album of my original pop songs. It's going to feature my singing, piano, guitar, and violin playing on it.
I've been producing music since I was about 16. I'm 22 as I record this video, and I've been doing nothing but trying to improve upon that since I discovered it, thanks to my piano teacher.
I started remixing sometime in early 2012. I think I submitted my first mix to the judges panel, which was a bluegrass arrangement of a Final Fantasy VII tune, and I got it, so here I am.
The OC Remix forums, that's where I started. I remember I did some early remixes, posted them on there and got really good feedback. I mean, I look back at those early remixes and they were nothing compared to, the sort of level I'm doing now.
One of the reasons I started OverClocked Remix in the first place was because I wanted to get better. I wanted to do a lot of different types of music, and I also really like video game music, so I figured, well, I'll learn how to, work in different genres with different styles by arranging video game music. Around that point in time, no one was really, well, people were doing that, but there wasn't one big site, and it was more common with Commodore 64 music to do like electronic and techno, and I really wanted to do multiple different genres. Anyway.
Yeah, so basically I work with my ears by practicing and trying a lot over and over again. Started to make better stuff, got on OC ReMix, VGMix back then. I've made a few soundtracks for minor games on PC, internet, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, iOS, cell phones. And yeah, then some independent project, a little bit of TV. I can make music in a lot of styles. Maybe it be rock, orchestral, jazzy, techno, melodic, and world music, whatever. Got a lot to learn still. And I'm a bit rusty. I don't make music as much as I used to because I have other activities going. I'm also a podcaster, shoutcaster in France.
Jeremy Robson is the composer from which I draw my inspiration. I met Jeremy back in 2003. I started bothering him actually about sampling and his tracks. I'm sure most of you know about his Final Fantasy VII Suite that was featured on OverClocked Remix. That actually sparked my interest in sampling, and I started bothering him like every day, multiple times a day. He got so sick of me, but through that I gained a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge about sampling, and lo and behold, back in 2006 he sent me his Final Fantasy VII finale, and I sampled that. It was the first piece I ever sampled, and he loved it, and therefore started our relationship in sampling together.
First of all, Final Fantasy VI is my favorite one out of the entire Final Fantasy series. Okay, maybe with the exception of Final Fantasy Tactics, but that doesn't count because it's not part of the main numbering. But Final Fantasy VI is awesome. It's the last 2D game that they made before they started doing everything 3D. And if you know me, you know that I love pixel art. You know that I love, sprite-based graphics. I'm wearing an I Want to Be Guy shirt. I'm crying out loud.
It's a great honor to be on this project. I love FF6. It was one of my favorite games growing up.
I've acknowledged Final Fantasy VI to be one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Though one thing that hit me home was how intimidating the villains ultimately turned out to be, especially turning into the second half with Kefka successfully conquering the world.
Final Fantasy VI is a special game for me because, well, it's one of the first RPGs I played, and the character development, that's something I really like, and I haven't seen in much games. So
I've been playing Final Fantasy VI on the Game Boy Advance, but I pretty much got stuck at the Phantom Train. I think there were a lot of things before that were kind of, I don't know, tricky maybe. I don't know. I just quit. I don't know why. I haven't finished playing it yet, so there.
The scenes around the floating continents in particular changed my perception on how a video game story should progress, and made me understand that there can be a painfully low point before the heroes could finally earn their happy ending.
So yeah, I just really like the art style, I like the story, I like the fact that there's lots of quirky characters.
My favorite memory from Final Fantasy VI, or my favorite moment in the game, is actually right at the beginning. When you're going through the Mines of Narsh, and where their story develops. It's a very epic beginning to a game, and I feel it's the best beginning to a game that I've ever played. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way about that.
The opera is one of my favorite scenes because instead of being a non-interactive cutscene, the game makes the player run around frantically backstage, trying to prevent the opera from falling apart mid-scene. And I felt this was really effective because it adds humor to sort of a dramatic scene. But it's also really engaging. Instead of just sitting back and watching, you're sort of actively involved in it.
Add to Kefka's development as the game goes on, I am firm in my opinion that he is the greatest Final Fantasy villain ever!
And Terra is really awesome. She's like the most awesome character ever, and Kefka is the best villain, and like Sephiroth is super lame. Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't finished. I just haven't. So there.
One of my favorite experiences, my favorite memories with Final Fantasy VI would probably be the ending. I was blown away by what would be back then the most cinematic and awesome climax to a video game I yet experienced. The whole music medley, the whole musical suite that plays along the ending still gives me goosebumps up to this day. Because yeah, I keep playing this game. I play it like almost like once or twice a week because I also speedrun the game on my Twitch channel. I have the second best time worldwide on the US version. I still don't get tired by the whole soundtrack and some of the scenes, and I love the gameplay, the mechanics around it. And every time I finish it and the ending theme and sequences play, it still feels fresh in my mind.
One of my favorite memories from Final Fantasy VI is in the ending sequence. It's actually kind of a musical memory, is when you have Celeste's theme on one hand and you have Locke's theme on the other, and at first they're kind of separate, and then Uematsu sort of weaves them together during the ending sequence, and that gets me every time I play that game. It's just a great scene.
I have played the game, so this answer shouldn't be, misleading or whatnot, but my favorite memory from the game is actually the very beginning, with Terra's theme and the marching, and the snow coming down and the credits rolling, simply because, nowadays video games are so cinematic and everything is like a movie and everyone tries to make it like Hollywood scores and whatnot. Back then, to roll the credits like that over a piece of music, a great piece of music, a piece of music that, as fans of OverClocked ReMix know, has been arranged like, 30,000 times. It was kind of novel. It was kind of unique. You knew you were setting out on a really long game, a long journey, and they were making a big deal about it with rolling the credits like that, but it was justified. And so that's probably my favorite memory of the game, is right from the outset, that march.
My favorite memories from Final Fantasy VI are the music. I remember hearing Mount Colts, the theme to Mount Colts, come on, and I remember just stopping playing and listening to this melody. I mean, I don't need to convince anyone listening how beautiful that song and the rest of the soundtrack is. That's why we're here.
Nobuo himself, of course, is one of my favorite classical composers. We have a really good Philharmonic here in Fort Wayne that I'm lucky enough to go and visit pretty frequently, and they just have great musicians, and they play, British pops and a lot of like Elgar and classical composers that are, very highly esteemed. And while I don't think a lot of Westerners really know Nobuo's name per se outside of the game industry, he's just one of those musicians and composers and songwriters that's been able to craft these beautiful pieces. And they've been translated from, 8 and 16-bit platforms into, sweeping orchestras with the arrangements that have been done, and the piano collections pieces, which are really great.
I love the whole soundtrack. I think it's, along with 7, probably the Uematsu soundtrack that is the most consistent. Like, there is no leftover track, no track that feels tacked on or weaker than the others, so...
Of course, the music is epic. So many masterpieces in one game. I think the SNES era of that time with Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasies was a really good era for us musicians.
I love the soundtrack. It was really influential on me as a musician. So it's just great to be part of this community that's as excited about the game as I am, and together we're paying homage to the original work.
My favorite track from Final Fantasy VI actually continues on to the last question, which is actually The Mines of Narsh. It's my favorite track. Why is it my favorite? Because back when I used to play it, which was all the time, I used to have trouble sleeping at night, so I took my Super Nintendo, turned on the game, and I actually always had a save point at the Mines of Narsh. And so I just put that on my stereo, turned off my television, and went to sleep with that playing all the time.
I never really got into Final Fantasy VI. I loved 4. And I had a soundtrack CD of 4 and 6 that I listened to when I was living and working in New York City, but never got into the game so much. But here's the funny thing. When I drove to work, I drove in the city from Jersey City up to the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which, as you know, if you live there, a lot of traffic, long drive, depending on the day, some days, short drive. I put in the Final Fantasy soundtrack CD on occasion. When you're looking down at your character and he's walking around talking to people and things pop up and you see villagers just walk around by themselves, you drive around New York City, Manhattan, with that music playing, you look at the window, everyone walking by you looks like one of those people. This pedestrian just walking along, stopping to talk to somebody, walking along. It was the weirdest and coolest and most surreal thing, driving to work through Manhattan, playing Final Fantasy music. I'll never forget it. The track that came on every time that always made me smile and gave me a weird vibe was the Slam Shuffle theme. And it was playful, it was weird, it was quirky, it was catchy, and I always thought, well, if I were to remix something from this game, that's the theme I would do, since I hadn't played a game, but it had nostalgia for me through driving to work in Manhattan, as weird as that is.
My favorite track in all of Final Fantasy VI is probably the ending theme. And I know it's cheating a little bit because it consists of all the different character themes put together, but back in the day, I used to, I had a MIDI file of the entire Final Fantasy VI ending, and I would just listen to that, and I listened to it enough that I eventually remembered how the whole thing went. And so sometimes just to pass time when I was bored, long car rides or something, I would just go and hum the entire ending theme to myself. And I knew that it was 20 to 30 minutes long, and so that would keep me off bed for a while. So that's what I would do to pass time.
The whole music that starts playing from the start of the final battle against the first statue, the whole dancing mad suit, and then the ending theme, the ending medley. Basically anything from the start of that last battle up to the end screen with the prelude, amazing. The final battle tracks, the way they sing into each other, it's what made, along with the amazing artwork and the tension, that final battle, those final battles, the most intense thing ever. Those tracks, the whole Dancing Mad themes, and Dancing Mad, which is the Gefka battle track, are fantastic, and the ending medley as well, because the work on that is just mind-blowing. when you get the whole roster of characters in the game, the medley is so well made, feels natural. And then when you get the dramatic scene with what will happen to Terra and everything, once Setzer tells her she's saved, and he tells her, "Did I tell you this is the world's fastest airship?" And the theme goes, like, explodes and goes into that really uplifting mood. And up to that point, that's when I get the goosebumps, and the final build-up as well until the airship flies into the sky. I think definitely the ending tracks. I couldn't pick one. I'm sorry.
I really like Forever Rachel. That's one of my favorites.
Epitaph is probably my favorite piece of music from the entire soundtrack, and that's saying something. I mean, just Terra and the main thematic music is so great, but I always had a soft spot for Epitaph. It only plays once in the whole game, and it's just that part when when Setzer is going down the steps to sort of revisit an old wound.
The Opera House and Dancing Mad and the ending sequence are just phenomenal in my opinion. I remember being my 8-year-old, 9-year-old self and getting my Kefka's Domain CD and seeing that there were songs on there that were like 20 minutes long or whatever, and I was like, wow, you think of music from video games as just a couple of seconds really that's repeated over and over and over again, and once I got these, I was kind of like running to my parents going, oh, look at this, it's actually real music. So those are some of my absolute favorites.
Final Fantasy VI is still, for me, the greatest game Squaresoft has done, and the best work Nobuo Uematsu has ever done as well.
So when we launched this Kickstarter, it originally said that I was going to do the Devil's Lab in the style of Queen. So the original was like dun 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 dun. You probably heard it. You're probably familiar with it. I was going to do with the bass line and make it sound more like Another One Bites the Dust, which is a Queen song. And so I was going to have the bass line go basically. I feel really stupid singing it, but okay. Hopefully this never ends up on YouTube and whatever. But I was going to have it go dun 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 dun, and kind of be funky with a bass line, funk guitar, whatnot. I sat on that work in progress for a long time, and I could never get past the initial idea of just that bass line, that rhythm. I couldn't take it any further. If you're looking for an arrangement in the style of Queen, I don't know if it was just coincidence or whatnot, but Jake did the opera in the style of Queen, and it kicks major ass. It's way better than my mix, and so you end up getting your Queen fix one way or the other. I went through several different versions. What I finally settled on was what I always seem to settle on nowadays, which is sort of like hybrid electronic orchestral. I guess there were several inspirations. Eventually, what I landed on was I wanted it to sound sinister. I wanted it to sound evil. And the other thing is I wanted it to be primarily orchestral. So while there are electronic elements, there's basically the drums and a bass that you could call it a dubstep bass. It's like sort of poor man's dubstep because a lot of the wobbles are just built in and they're not synced or anything like that. Hopefully you won't notice. I think the entire track was one instance of Contact and one instance of Omnisphere, and that's it, which is nice, keep it simple. And it's a short mix. I actually recorded it double tempo, but I think the actual tempo is close to like 80. If any of you have seen Dexter, I'm a big fan. I like the theme song. The Dexter opening TV theme ends with this little ding, and I kind of ripped it off. Although I'm sure the Dexter theme was not the first, piece of music to end with a little triangle at the end. For some reason, it just worked for this arrangement. I guess it's better than a fade out, right? The equipment I use, I'm on Cubase. I'm still on Cubase, but as I am recording this video, so I'm actually learning Reaper. So I'm probably going to switch from Cubase to Reaper just because I don't like USB dongles. I already mentioned use Contact a lot. Who doesn't? And I have my nice Kurzweil PC3 MIDI controller. My track was the last to be finished. for any project directors who want me on your album, I'm sort of like I'm always the last to finish because I'm working on OverClocked ReMix. And I have to post mixes and do site stuff. So, usually I'm the albatross to any project in terms of deadline. The hardest thing was starting over 4 or 5 times. I did go back and listen to Andy Zircon's Dirt Devil remix because I was like, okay, well, people have done Devil's Lab before. McVaffe did it, Andy's done it. The 2 project directors have done it. So I went back and listened to Andy's mix, and he cheated. It's a great mix, but he cheated a little bit because it's not just Devil's Lab. He works in other themes from FF6 to sort of round it out and give it a song structure that develops and has a lot of variety. I didn't want to do that because I felt like on an FF6 album with the arrangements and themes, we should kind of stick to the one theme and not do too much overlapping. So I stuck with Devil's Lab, and that's one of the reasons the mix is so short. It's shorter than most of the stuff I do.
So the Johnny C. Bad remix is sort of an electro funk sort of feel. I moved it away from that sort of original rock and roll feel of it, slowed it down to a half beat feel, trying to get a lot of sort of electronic groove being played, but still keeping that original, piano feel of it, and try and get some big sort of drum solos into it too. Inspirations for this, a lot came from an artist called Opiu, and a song called Robo Booty. Then other things like Stevie Wonder, Justice, Daft Punk, all that sort of, so a bit of a mixture of electronic and funk really. My second track, the Metamorphosis remix, There Will Be Blood. Influence is really a lot more from the dubstep genre of things like Skrillex, and I just had a bit of fun with that, just going a bit mad, chucking in as many crazy electronic sounds as I possibly could really and get away with it. So both my tracks, I tend to produce everything first in Cubase, get a lot of synths going in, maybe chuck some samples in, and then from there I'll maybe take it into Ableton Live and do some more sort of audio processing on it, glitching things up maybe, that sort of stuff. And yeah, so it's all mostly software based for me. I don't really do much with live instruments, and the most live stuff I'll do is taking samples from anywhere that I can, really anywhere that works.
By the time we're introduced to the Gestalian Empire, they already have this stranglehold on the world, as well as being critical to Terra's growth. Much of the first half of the game is based around her learning what she is, her bad memories of her time with the Empire, and what she can do to stop them from causing any more damage. So it's natural that Terra's innermost fear is played out via Gestalian Sonata, which evolves that fear and culminates with the newfound gut instinct to chase them out. It's something that transfers well into real life too. There may be something in which we can have a significant fear over, but things could change dynamically if you do something about these fears. For my equipment, at around the time of the track's creation, my setup was a little more primitive than it is now. Basically, it was originally my keyboard, the PSR E43 that I've used for the past 6 years, hooked into my old laptop computer with the tracks being concepted in my old Cubase software. I have since invested on another PC, with Reaper being my primary workstation of choice now, and over the past couple of years I've been slowly building up a more expansive sound library, with Brandon Strader giving me pointers on what to take on board. He even suggested me to use the Contact Native Instruments patch Alicia's keys for my piano solo work during that time, which was what was ultimately used to give the defining, delicate sound for Gestalian Sonata. And with Black Genesis, I decided to channel in that storytelling curveball that I just mentioned via the new consonants into a musical form incorporating early doom metal inspirations. As well as doing a lot with the source material at hand, it also references a handful of other key cameos at that point in the game in order to reflect this sudden apocalypse, and gets noted considerably by the mood throughout. It may start out as a more determined take on the source, but over time things start to change, and by the end things get more ominous as the player finally realizes that they are completely screwed. For Black Genesis, it went by the general scenario of pretty much most of my collaborations with Brandon. Originally, I'd write the track out as a MIDI, then he would receive it, record his live instrument parts, and also went on to do the production work for it. In fact, Brandon's overall enthusiasm with the community at large was a huge aid in getting me re-involved with OC remixes on the social level over the past couple of years. And if it weren't for the initial encounter during development for the Sonic 1 album, The Sound of Speed, odds are I would have been a different person, and a handful of tracks I might have done in the past may not even have existed.
I think the hardest part about my contribution was probably recording Black Genesis. A lot of the guitar parts were pretty fast. I know in the end the song doesn't seem so fast now listening to it, but at the time I was practicing triplets a lot, so I threw a lot of those in, trying to get faster on the guitar, and the lead melody thing was actually kind of tricky, so I think I did pretty good with that. The real highlight of Mazedude is the ukulele, which I have right here. Ta-da! It's just a regular ukulele. It sounds like one. Oh, it's out of tune. Sorry about that. Yeah, they go out of tune very fast. But ukulele, very nice. Usually very nice. Usually sounds good. Mazedude, it actually wasn't difficult at all. Maybe learning some of the chords on the ukulele, but that was about it. It just took a lot of time because there was a lot of automation to put in. So that kind of stuff takes a pretty long time. Got to click it all in. I know other people working with Fruity Loops. They probably say, "Oh, that's easy," blah blah. But I don't know. I use Cubase 6. It's not really hard, it just takes a long time. So, yeah.
So, for my remix, I remixed the Edgar 7 theme, the Figaro theme, using mainly piano. That's every mix I make. As for the equipment, I don't use computers much. I use my electric piano, and everything else is created on there. Then I record it and I edit it on my computer. But all the composing, all the arranging is done on the piano.
My contribution to the album is a 9-bit chiptune style remix of the Blackjack theme. It's called There's Nothing Like Flying, and I submitted it to the Final Fantasy VI remix contest over at OverClocked Remix forums, where it tied for second place, along with some other really great entries. So this mix was made entirely using software in FL Studio. Most of the synths are just made using FL's basic 3-oscillator synth. I don't have any actual external hardware to speak of. I just sequence everything using my keyboard and mouse. I don't even have a MIDI keyboard. That's just how I work. There's a bunch of different inspirations that I had and drew from while I was making this mix. The very opening arpeggio sequence is actually pretty much directly ripped from the Fez soundtrack, which is by Disaster Piece. So if you have not heard that soundtrack yet, I highly recommend that you go check it out. It's a great soundtrack. And there's another part in the beginning, near the beginning, where there's like a whistly triangle wave type lead, and that actually plays a melody from another one of my songs called Fractal, which I did for 1 Hour Combo. And the reason I put those two things in there is not really because I was planning on it, but just because I was kind of trying to get things to come together in this mix. It was taking a little bit, I was having a little bit more trouble than I usually do when I'm making songs, and I just randomly decided to throw those in there, and it worked, and I liked the way it sounded, so I kept it in there. And you know, I pinged Disaster Piece and asked him if it was okay, and he said yeah, as long as I give him credit. So I'm giving you credit, Disaster Piece. You're awesome.
For this project, we selected 2 tracks to focus on, which were Kafka's Tower or The Last Dungeon and The Dark World. If any of you have ever listened to Jeremy and my tracks before, you'll know that we draw our inspiration from many different pieces of music. However, the main pieces of music for these 2 tracks, for Trower March, the main influence was Mahler. It was designed after a Mahler march, so all instruments, no choir. For Elegy for a Ruined World, it's based off of Vaughan Williams' Sinfonia Antarctica. And you'll hear that definitely within those 2 pieces, Mahler and Vaughan Williams. The equipment that I used to create these, actually quite a bit. You really can't see much behind me, but you can see my vast array of monitors that I have. I actually have 4 machines that are tied into my sampling. I have my main machine, which is a Dell Precision 690, and that is where I sequence my tracks with Cakewalk Sonar X1, and I use mostly Quantum Leap East-West libraries. Specifically on these tracks, I used the Hollywood series, so Hollywood Strings Diamond and Hollywood Brass Diamond. Also, I used intermixed some Vienna woodwinds with it, and the percussion was Project Sam, True Strike, and True Strike 2. The machines that power the EWQL sample libraries are they have to be pretty big. For my string box, which is down there, you can't see it, but it's a Dell Optiplex 980, and with about 16 gigs of RAM in it, and I have it hooked up to a true hardware RAID with 4 solid-state drives, which is what they recommended when you buy it. So it's a lot of prep, it's a lot of hardware, and I have it on a RAID 5. I also have the same setup over there on my brass machine, which is the identical machine with my strings machine, set up with the same RAID for Hollywood Brass. So there is a lot of hardware that is used to create these. The most difficult challenge that I faced with creating these pieces, first of all, Jeremy really outdid himself with the composing of these pieces. Very detailed. Lots of counterpoint, lots of detailed progressions and chords that needed to sound very specific to his inspiration and his vision for the piece. And that actually leads into the second biggest challenge, which was financing all of this, upgrading my hardware and taking advantage of the newer, more powerful sample libraries available today.
So about this Spinatrag remix, first of all, I always loved this track from FF6. I love ragtime. I'm a big fan of Scott Joplin, so Joplin was definitely a big influence for me when I was making this remix. In high school, I actually did an audition on Scott Joplin's Pineapple Rag arranged for viola, and this arrangement was full of these tricks that you can do on the viola or violin that you can't do on the piano, like sliding from pitch to pitch. And so ever since then, I always had the impression that ragtime is very well suited for strings. So for me, it was a really easy choice of which remix I wanted to do and how I wanted to arrange it.
I took on 3 tracks for the Final Fantasy VI project. I took on the Magic House, the Velt in collaboration with OA, Nutritious, and King Tiger, and the Fierce Battle. The inspirations for my remixes came from a wide variety of places, but I'd say for the Velt and the Fierce Battle, my biggest influences would include, but are not limited to, Pendulum, Noisia, and John B, and a bunch of other great drum and bass acts out there. For the Magic House remix, my influences were heavily on the side of Justice, Nero, and the retro 80s styled yet very, very compressed and hardcore house kind of thing. The equipment I use is my home studio, which is comprised of a couple of monitors, a good pair of headphones, FL Studio on my custom-built computer, and a bunch of third-party plugins that I've bought over the years. I have bought almost nothing at full price. I've bought, I'd say 95% of my equipment on sale. So you don't have to do that much as far as money goes to actually get a good sound. In fact, there's a bunch of freeware plugins I still use on a regular basis because I just like the way they sound. So you don't have to spend much money to get a good setup. However, if you do spend the money, make sure you're spending on something good, because it will be an investment you can use for the rest of your musical life.
I did the arrangements for Rest in Peace and for Epitaph, which became A Tranquil Rest and Catabasis. Musically, Motoi Sakuraba's Reflected Moon was a big inspiration for both tracks. It's got a more legato vibe to it, which is what I was going for. And there's a quiet but intentional movement to it, which I really liked a lot. The name Catabasis came from, that I came up with for the song. It just seemed to fit well. Robert Bly wrote a book called Iron John, that he writes just a book about men. And he writes about the time that men spend in ash and sort of this menial low point of sorts, but one that's really meaningful. I should also mention that catabasis can mean a journey, so this seemed appropriate for the title. A lot of the skeleton of the songs is written just, with like a glass of wine at Biaggi's on like a MacBook Pro. So most of it happens with pretty basic instruments for me when I'm putting together just the structure of the song. In this case, I went through with both songs and had classical musicians play some of the pieces that I'd written just to capture that sense of emotion that you can't really ever get with a virtual instrument. But a lot of if I had to say like a percentage of the tracks that was real instruments, it would probably be 10%. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've used is 8 Dios instruments. They're adagio strings for a lot of the ensemble violins. And actually for Rest in Peace, I used their 1928 Steinway plugin, which is just an unbelievable, really dark piano. It just has lots of character and you don't have to drown it with reverb like you do with some plugins to make it sound good. So I love that one. The gear itself helps, but a lot of times I think just the proverbial blood and sweat and tears that a person puts into a mix are really what makes it sound like it sounds. For the inputs and outputs, just as the interface, For the violin, I actually used an AEA microphone, a 440 with a True Systems Precision preamp. There's an abundance of inexpensive audio gear out there that works just great. I used a $100 Audio-Technica 2020 on the cello. A lot of the more expensive microphones that I have access to and that I've used before just were too brittle on the top end. So, poor carpenter blames his tools, and I just think that I'm a big proponent of low-end theory, I guess you would say. So a lot of the mixing and the recording actually happens just right in this room, which is just a spot that I chose in my house to turn into like a home studio. I acoustically treated it. I tore the ceiling out and put some rock sole covered in fabric over it, basically, and some oak trim to make it look nice. But it makes the room very acoustically neutral.
It took a few tries. It took a few tries to get started because I tried ethnic genres, I tried different things, and the one that really stuck was acid jazz. And to bump it up a notch, I even brought in a live trumpet player to give me that Miles Davis type vibe I was going for, which was the intention. It wasn't about being acid jazz, it was about doing a Miles Davis style acid jazz tune. To which I hope I succeeded, and it makes it weird, but I hope you enjoy it. And that's the story. The idea for that came from driving to work in Manhattan while playing the original CD, while looking at people walking down the street, imagining their video game characters walking up to people like sprites and so on, and just weird.
For de nuit, which means by night in French, I've used Cubase and a lot of samples I bought over the years, since I also make music professionally. So yeah, a lot of VST samples I have, and a MIDI keyboard, even though you see guitars behind here. And I have a MIDI keyboard, but I'm not really an instrument player. I fiddle around with the guitar, bass, and keyboard, but I wouldn't call myself a performer. So yeah, a lot of clicking and dragging, basically, and trying to get close to that jazzy mood, and which I think was a nice twist, because the Phantom Forest track is a track I absolutely love, but making an ambient remix of it would not be too smart, because yeah, the track is already pretty ambient. So I've tried something different, mixing it with the Phantom Train feel itself, so a little bit more upbeat. The percussion kind of feels like the train is moving, and yeah, basically gave it a retro jazzy feel. And I had a fake synthetic violin on the track first, and then it became obvious that having a live violin would enhance the piece a lot. So Level 99 put me in touch with Jeff Ball, and yeah, basically I gave him the renders of the tracks without the violin, and then the violin alone, the fake violin, so we could play over them. Eventually had a little bit of a spice, which he did, and yeah, he sent me a few days later his recordings, nicely made, nicely organized, several things to pick from and work with. So, and I just had to mix them in and make sure that they were shining like they should be. Did a great job. And yeah, second time I worked with a violinist, and really glad I did, because I don't play violin. And yeah, this took quite a while to do. I'm usually a fast worker because I've done a lot of timed competitions before, basically have 1 hour to make a track. So yeah, but this one took a few days with a nice amount of hours every time. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the track. Definitely, I hope you like it. And yeah, props to Jeff Bull, great violin and great guy to work with.
My inspirations for Following Forgotten come from some ambient music that I like listening to. One in particular, there's an album called The Pearl by Brian Eno, and he's got a long storied history in music production, but check out The Pearl and give it some time to get used to it. Also check out the soundtrack to the game Machinarium by a guy called Thomas Dvorak. He also goes by the name FlowX. So Following Forgotten started with me trying to imitate the beginning of the C from the Machinarium soundtrack. The beginning of that track, the pad kind of comes in, and it's this really nice kind of shimmery pad, and then this arpeggio, kind of like a harp and electric piano, kind of comes in, and it's a really beautiful sound. And I was trying to imitate that. I didn't get as close as I wanted to, but it's a really nice sound on that track, the C, and it's really well timed in the game. When you slow things down and space things out that much, it's pretty forgiving, because there's a lot of reverb and delay and white noise and automation, and it's a lot of sculpting. Not a lot of problem solving. It's just kind of, making sure things flow right and are paced well.
I decided to focus on the character of Setzer. He's always been kind of interesting to me. He's this wild gambler who owns an airship. He's almost kind of like the Han Solo of Final Fantasy VI. But there's also this side that they don't really dwell on too much in the game. He's first presented before you meet him as this mysterious guy who shows up at the end of operas and spirits away the lead actress onto his airship. And so you can kind of infer that he associates with this sort of high culture group, and it sounds like he enjoys the opera and whatever classical music exists in that world. So I kind of imagined Setzer long after the events of the game improvising at a piano, improvising on the theme of the duel from the opera. My first arrangement was pretty sequenced. It sounded kind of like a bad Beethoven sonata. It was a little bit stilted. And then I remembered this Hungarian street group that played folk music in Vienna, Austria, when I was on study abroad there. I just enjoyed them so much. They really had a way of making the music move. And I made the connection that Setzer actually looks kind of like Franz Liszt, and with his wild personality, it was kind of like him too. Franz Liszt was this composer-pianist who had a way of making women swoon over him. He gave these big concerts. He was one of the first to pioneer big public concerts, and he was almost like a rock star of our day back in the 19th century. And I also remembered that Franz Liszt had these Hungarian rhapsodies for piano that were very technically difficult, but they also had this movement to them. They were inspired by Hungarian folk music. So I revised my arrangement. I decided to dwell on that a little bit more, and I think it turned out really well. It flowed a lot better. What I ended up doing was I just took small takes of me playing at my Novation Impulse right here, and it's I wasn't able to get it all in one take, but I was able to splice it together in a way that felt a lot more human. I named it Jidorian Rhapsody as a pun on Hungarian Rhapsody, but also because Jidor is the town that's closest to the opera house, and they've got a mansion with a guy who curates art, so it seems like kind of a cultural hub for the game. And So I sort of imagined maybe Setzer, possibly living in that town at one point and listening to street musicians in the same way that Liszt might have collected folk music.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Some of the tracks I did on the album include the Mount Colts track, the Go-Go track, and the Phantom Train. The equipment I use for my remix is everything that's behind me. It's a couple of guitars, a flute, a clarinet, a saxophone, and I think there's some trumpet in there somewhere too. Anything that I had on hand, I threw it in there. There's even some whistling. So yeah, whatever I had here is what I use. My technical side is I have some really sort of low-end microphones. The MXL 990 and 991 are my condensers, and I use an Audix i5 as my dynamic if I'm not using the industry standard SM58. My sound card is a Focusrite Sapphire Pro Audio 14, and that's it.
If you are an aspiring remixer, and I was to give you one single piece of advice, that advice would probably be this: don't be afraid to ask for help. I am a workshop mod on the forums at OCR, and my job is to go and give feedback on your track if you mark it for mod review, and essentially pick it apart, but in a good way, a way that will help you improve. One of the things that even I have to worry about is I can only get better if people give me constructive feedback on my tracks, which is kind of a hard thing to deal with at my stage in life, where I feel like, oh, I've got this. I'm a good remixer. Of course I can do this by myself. Your opinion? I don't need it. Not true. In fact, during a couple of these song creations that I had on here, the mix was drastically improved by the suggestions of others. So even the so-called pros need some help sometimes.
It's such a great community on there that will say, this is great, that's not great, here's why, here's what you can do, and you'll just soon just start improving massively. And it's all just from all the great guys on OC Remix. And
I think OCR really helped me improve, because that was the first time I really made something for myself, and then people with a lot of understanding, people that worked in quite the same way, could really respond and react to what you were doing. And I think I've really grown the past few years. And well, that's also apparent if you listen to my earliest remixes and the remixes I make now. I can even listen to the earlier remixes I made because they're full of errors, and it's just so I'm really glad for that.
Aspiring remixers out there, if I just had one single piece of advice that I would give you, it would be to keep doing it. I think we've all had that feeling of when you start something new and you have all the inspiration and energy, and then something happens. It's like the energy goes down and things get a little bit tougher. So I think that's the make or break point for a lot of people, and sometimes people just give up. So I want to say, don't give up. Keep doing it. The more you work on it, your skills will improve, you'll be happier with the music that you're making, and ultimately it's going to become more and more rewarding. So don't forget your inspiration, the reason why you wanted to do it in the first place, and you're just going to have a great feeling when you see your first remix get posted.
I would say, don't let the tools you use, your instruments, your software, don't let it restrict the way you think or the way you listen. I mean, I've grown up really kind of obsessed with music technology and music theory, but the more mature I get, the more I realize that those are just their means to an end, and they can entrap your mind. They can trap your mind, man. Focus on sounds and rhythms. Start with good sounds and human, interesting beats and rhythms or performances. Just the sound and the rhythms, whatever you're using, whether it's software, piano, anything. Just focus on the good sound and make it move well, and the rest will fall into place.
This might not be for everyone, depends on your style, but I would highly recommend that you just find a way to schedule in some regular time, some just time for you to practice mixing like every week. And it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be just like half an hour, an hour. An hour is usually the right amount of time, I feel. And for me, that was done just because I started doing 1 hour compo. And that just improved my mixing and production skills so much. I don't know, like everything that I do, from like my mixing to the arrangement to just coming up with melodies, like everything just became so much more streamlined after I did 1 hour compo for a while. And I feel like now I can just like stream out music, boom, boom, boom. Like I already know everything that I want to do, and like I know all the keyboard shortcuts and everything. And so yeah, I just find a way to practice regularly and it'll help you a lot.
The biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody out there who is interested in becoming a sample artist is don't let your circumstances get in the way of your dream. It doesn't matter where you are, location-wise, it doesn't matter what resources you have right now. The most important part is where you're going to be in 2 to 5 years. If you plan for it and you develop a strategy of how you're going to make it happen, you can make this happen. I live in Wisconsin, in the middle of the country. There is absolutely nobody around here that samples with me. I'm all alone here. I don't make it out to any of the video game festivals. All the OverClocked ReMix staff is actually out on the East Coast, so I'm kind of isolated here. And I know that there are a lot of people out there in my same circumstance. So my biggest piece of advice is don't let anything stand in the way of your dream. This is possible. Being an artist is a labor of love, and you have to make time for what's important.
Start with what you know. I entered my piece actually as a part of a 2-week contest, so I only had about 14 days to make it. And I would have loved to do a funk or electronic abuse piece, but that's not really where my skill set is. I went to college and studied mostly classical music. I played piano, so I felt that was the genre where I could make my best work in such a short amount of time. So my advice is to start with what you know. Even if you haven't done a remix before, you might have some musical background in other areas of life. Once you get a couple tracks under your belt and you're used to the process, I feel like it'll probably be a lot easier to switch over to another style and start becoming comfortable with that.
You don't necessarily need music theory, even though that's a bonus. But yeah, just gotta be persistent, I suppose, and love music, love game music. Well, not only game music, love music. I listen to everything. I used to be a little, how could I say that, elitist about what I used to listen to. I would only listen like to weird, cryptic electronic music. Now I listen to everything from pop to country to whatever, as long as there's something good, well made, well produced. I think there's something to enjoy in every style of music. So yeah, keep an open mind about it and do it.
The best advice I can give to an aspiring remixer is to arrange music that means something to you. We are all artists at the end of the day, and through your own interpretation of the source material, you'll feel happy with yourself and more motivated to keep fine-tuning the craft. Music arranging is a creative hobby, and the best way to maintain a keen interest in the hobby is by not taking the craft too seriously. And what you choose to remix would definitely help with that. I would definitely be happy to see what kind of developments you can do in the future. Whatever happens, you've got my full support.
What's up, OCR? This is Flexstyle, and I'm here with King Tiger, and we are about to record some hand percussion for my remix of the Veld theme from Final Fantasy VI.
Just want to say thank you on behalf of Jeremy and myself for watching.
So I'm really looking forward to the album.
So that's about all I have. So this is DDRKirby signing out. Hope you enjoy the album.
Thanks for listening. I hope you like following Forgotten and enjoy the project.
So I want to hear how that's done. Hopefully it's not techno filth.
I hope you enjoyed my remix, and I look forward to hearing your contributions to the OCR community.
That's all I got.
I know I'm guilty of doing techno filth myself with Monsterdomus, but I like it. I like techno. The filthier, the better.
Anyways, I'm tired. I gotta go back to my baby. And this is my kitty. And enjoy the album. Really, enjoy. Thanks for listening.
And I hope you enjoy all of Final Fantasy VI Balance and Ruin. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks for supporting our album, and I hope you enjoy it.
So thanks again to everybody that was involved with the project. I know we got a lot of generous donations that helped fund it, so it's a really great thing to be involved with. And thanks to Laura Intravia for her flute contributions, to Jeffrey Green for his cello, and for Emily Mondock for viola and violin. It's been a great thing to be involved with, and I'm really proud of just everybody that contributed to the project. Thanks again.